Alright then, so this is my preview for the second game of the season against Tottenham Hotspurs, who had a decent result, getting a 2-2 draw against Brentford away from home in Andy Postecoglou's first proper match. And it was their first match without Harry Kane. This is their first proper match in the post-Harry Kane era, which would be interesting to see how they function, because they pretty much knew he was gone by the time they played last week. But he is officially gone. He has officially played his first game for Bayern Munich. Didn't go to plan, but hey ho. And this is their first home game. When they played Brentford, they dominated the ball. They were aggressive. They were just a very good side. And it's going to be interesting to see how that correlates and if that moves on to how he plays us as well. Brentford played a 3/5 at the back, which then did give Tottenham that little bit more license to push forwards a bit more. But it did also come at a cost, with Brentford scoring 2 goals, and Tottenham were getting exposed fairly often on the counter, which is something Manchester United will look to expose also. Anyway, let's stop waffling. Let's get into how it is I think both teams will line up, shall I? There we go. So, pretty much unchanged from last week. If I scoot out of the way, there you go, you can kind of see it. If I move myself, there you go. Luke Shaw. You probably could have guessed that anyway, with Malacia out injured. Anyway, so, same as last week, apart from bringing in Jadon Sancho down the middle and pushing Rashford onto the left-hand side. This is no slight on Alejandro Garnacho. It just wasn't his game last week. This is more his sort of game. But I want to see Rashford back on that wing spot, with Rasmus Højlund looking more likely to be featuring in the near future. So we need to put Rashford back on that left-hand side. We need Sancho in just to help with that ball retention. Have him drop in those pockets of spaces just to keep the game ticking, especially against Tottenham, who will look to press, who will look to win the ball back. And fun fact, Tottenham had the highest field tilt, if you know what that means, in the first match, which is basically it looks at where everyone's possession is in the 90 minutes, and Tottenham had the highest average possession high up the pitch. So I think they had like an 80% field tilt, which meant that 80% of the time the ball is in Brentford's half. I think that's how it works. But it just means that they had the ball in very dangerous areas for a lot of the game. Whether that's by design from Brentford, allowing them to have that ball, because in the end Tottenham only created around 0.6 xg from open play. The majority of the stuff came from set pieces. So that's something that Manchester United will have to look out for, considering we're not very good at defending set pieces. But it also shows that although Tottenham had a lot of the ball, their creativity and those little passing patterns aren't there yet in this Ange Postecoglou team. That being said, how can we beat them? So let's have a look at the starting 11. Andre Onana in goal, obviously. Back for Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez and Shaw. There's 2 question marks in that back line. You've got Wan-Bissaka, who had a very good game. He was one of his better games against Wolves. He was found wanting a few times in terms of his defensive discipline and his positioning. A few times the ball getting behind far too easily, and his positioning wasn't great. But he did get that assist and had a decent game as well. He had a decent game. And then the other question mark is Lisandro Martinez, who did come off at half-time due to a little niggle. Hopefully it's not too bad and it was just precaution we brought him off. But I thought I'd bring it up nonetheless. Luke Shaw is a stalwart with Malacia out injured. Rafael Varane, who got the winner and was very, very good. Arguably man of the match, along with Andre Onana, who should have given him a penalty but didn't. Rafael Varane was probably our best player. So he sticks on the side. And then we have a midfield 3 of Casemiro in the 6, with Bruno and Mount as advanced 8s. There'll be a lot of question marks over that, in terms of if that actually will work as a 3. Because we saw at times Brentford, I wouldn't even say walk, because that implies that they had to do anything. We saw Brentford just go for our midfield with no hassle at all. Mainly because Bruno and Mount were operating so high up when the turnovers were happening. They had already been bypassed, and Casemiro was having to cover the whole of the pitch, which meant it just wasn't functional and wasn't able to do that. A lot of that came down to Wolves packing that midfield really, really, really tight. If we have a look at this is the average positions. So we see Manchester United here. We see Bruno and Mason Mount very narrow, very combined looked, they are, to be fair, it's interesting to see the fact that they are actually that tight knit. They seem to be moving around and functioning together. You see Casemiro just in front of the back two with Wan-Bissaka, Luke Shaw in the line with him. So it's building on the fact that we want to progress to a 2-3-2-3 team. It's not, the fullbacks didn't come inside as much as we would have wanted them to, but these Luke Shaw's more used to operating out wide, and so is Wan-Bissaka, so it's never going to quite function that well. But nonetheless, it wasn't great, which is why you see, if you have a look at the Wolves, they packed that midfield and they completely outnumbered us. They basically, everyone stayed central, so you have a 5 there, so they played in a 4-2-3-1 technically, but very, very, very narrow. And then you have Pedro and Neto just gambling and waiting for Luke Shaw to press forwards, which at times was made easy by the fact that Luke Shaw was inverting, and it's not really what he's used to. He's used to just hitting out in those wide positions, in which case that channel down there was left completely open, and he was fine with it. Anyway, this isn't the Wolves review, this is a Tottenham preview. So, how can we beat them? I'm going to go for, I don't know why Dawson's there. Dawson is clearly from Wolves. Let's fix that. It's going to be Romero. Even though he did come off early in the last match, it was apparently a concussion substitution, but I don't think it went down as a concussion substitution. But he came off because he got a knock. I think he hurt himself in the before the goal, and then just after the goal it made it worse, and he came off. But then did post later on social media that he was fine. So I'm going to assume that he's fine. They did bring on Davinson Sanchez for him last game, but I think that won't be an issue, and he will play this time round. So we'll go for Vicario in goal, back four of Emerson, Romero, Van der Ven, and Udogi, and then a midfield three of Oliver Skip, Yves Bissouma, and James Maddison, and a front three of Heung-min Son, Dejan Kulusevski, and Richarlison. In terms of a Tottenham 11, it's a decent side. It feels weird not talking about Tottenham and not talking about Harry Kane, but we're going to move on. It's the same way as we're talking about Manchester United and talking about David De Gea. But yeah. So how do Tottenham set up? Under Ange Postecoglou, they are far more advanced. They play a lot more attacking style of football. They play very high at the pitch, a very high line, which is why they brought in the likes of Van der Ven, who has a bit of pace about him. They look to do what we do. They have Richarlison operating high. They have Son using his width. And you have Maddison operating in the half space, and you have Oliver Skip doing the same thing. Not as creative as Maddison, but is very good at winning the ball back and just keeping the game ticking. And then Bissouma sits in that inside channel, and then Emerson and Udogi will look to invert. And they build up in what is somewhat a 2-3-2-3, or can be looked at as a 2-3-4-1, depending on how advanced Kulusevski and Son are at the time. And that is made evident by, there you go, that was their average positions in the Brentford game. So we see the back two here, you see Emerson and you see Udogi going inverted, with Yves Bissouma in the middle, just dictating play. He had a very, very good game. I think he had the most touches in the match that game. And then you see Maddison operating quite narrow, not narrow, quite close to Richarlison, who was just dropping in, finding little pockets just to try and create something. And you see Son and Kulusevski operating in that outside channels. So they look to build up like that. They look to play out from the back. They look to play a high line. They look to play aggressive. They look to keep the ball in good positions. The way that Manchester United can exploit this is because we are very, very good on the counter-attack. That's one thing that Ten Hag came out and said. He wants Manchester United to be the best attacking transition team in world football. And we're looking to build towards that. We saw that last season with United scoring the most counter-attacks in the Premier League, which is one of the reasons why I want Marcus Rashford playing, where it means that he and Anthony can cheat a bit, can hold that width, can stay on the outside channels, with Sancho just operating and popping up in these spaces. But more likely he'll probably sit around here, Bruno and Mount in these half spaces also. And then it just means if we were to play how we want to play, we can basically go man for man. In the sense that Mount can sit on Skip, Bruno on Bissouma, Shaw on Kulusevski, Wan-Bissaka on Son. You can have Varane or Casemiro on Maddison, and then you've got one person free for Richarlison. It will more than likely be Casemiro will have that man-marking job on Maddison and then you have one of Varane or Martinez free. Usually it's Varane. He's usually the free man who just sweeps up behind. And then we saw in pre-season when we played Arsenal, we play man for man in midfield. So we saw, I think it was Mount's job to mark Odegaard. You saw Bruno on Declan Rice. And then you saw Casemiro was on Havertz. So we looked to play man-to-man in midfield, which is one of the reasons why we struggled against Wolves, because we couldn't do that, because of the fact that they outnumbered us in midfield, and their midfield consisted of their wingers, their fullbacks, and their midfield at times. We just couldn't go man-for-man. We had to go zonal, and that's where it cost us. We weren't used to that, and they just broke because we just couldn't go man-for-man because there wasn't enough of us. So in this sort of system where they're basically playing how we want to play, so we can look at our weaknesses and use them as our strengths in terms of how to beat them. So that being said, how do I think it will line up? I think we will win. It'll be a tricky game, but we haven't lost to Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur. We haven't lost to Tottenham at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium just yet, I don't think. I think the last game we lost was in 2018 to them at home, in which would have been White Hart Lane at that point. So I don't see us losing. It'll be a tricky game considering Ange Postecoglou has them playing good style of football. But although we did struggle at times against Wolves, this game is far more suited to us. And I think that we've just got those cobwebs dusted now. Ten Hag's going to have got into the boys. He's going to make sure that they don't play the same way we did last time. And 2-0 win. I'm going to be confident. Tottenham, like I said, didn't create much from open play in the last game. United conceded too many chances, but I think we do it. I think we beat them 2-0. But yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this one. Leave your comments down below, and I'll be doing another video after the match is finished to do my little review. But yeah, you guys enjoyed. Peace.